Bumble Fumble, online dating apps struggle as people swear off swiping. That is the title of an article that's come out in The Guardian that I found very intriguing to read. And that made me think that I want to share a little bit about what we're seeing right now in terms of dating and what that means to you personally, whether you are actually actively dating or you're single and you're at least in theory open to the idea of finding a partner, but also if you are in a relationship, perhaps even a marriage. Because when we're seeing things shift in society, they do affect us, whether we are directly seeing these effects, whether we are directly impacted or not, because we are all interconnected. And normally these shifts say something about how we generally approach life and connections as such. So what's the article about? Essentially, it's talking about how online dating platforms are really struggling in terms of making revenue. So people are not on it as much as they used to be. Paying members are becoming increasingly sparse. People are not so ready to sign up and actually proactively use the platforms anymore. And this is true for both men and women, and irrespective of sexual orientation. And naturally, the owners of these platforms, they do not like that because this is how they make money, right? So they want people swiping away. And Bumble, who originates from this idea of making it actually more female friendly of an experience. You may know the background of the CEO of that company and how, there was connections to Tinder in the beginning. This is a little bit besides this video, but the whole point of Bumble was actually to be friendly towards women, where they are initiating the conversation and where they feel like they are more in charge of the dynamic and more in control. This is largely based on heterosexual dating. They had a bit of a hiccup in that they put out an advertisement because they noticed people are using the platform less. And in the ad, there is a woman that's swearing off the whole dating scene and is deciding to be celibate and actually become a nun. And then you see her like lusting over a gardener. I haven't seen this clip. I'm just going by what the article states. And there was a lot of backlash because it was essentially shaming people, not just women, but women in particular in this instance, for choosing to distance themselves from sexual partners and from actually wanting to no longer engage in the hookup culture and the sort of short-lived, brief connections with someone else who might be entirely disconnected from your network and who you might never ever see again. And I think this is a really interesting trend. And this is something that I personally and also in my circles, whether this is friends or clients, have observed. And it is this shift away from transactional, short-term relationships that actually do not fulfill our needs in the way that we thought they might. What's interesting is that this trend is happening at the same time where we're seeing a drop in polyamory. So there was a phase where this idea of having multiple relationships at the same time, of maybe questioning monogamy and of really asking, is this something that is true in our evolutionary past? I do want to say here that a lot of times when people talk about the evolutionary past, it is a very skewed view of men and women that I do not subscribe to. I am a psychologist rooted in evolutionary science. My PhD is very evolutionarily rooted. And this idea that the man has this desire to spread his seed and therefore is inherently non-monogamous, there is some evidence for that. But what is forgotten and what is often not just forgotten, but actively suppressed, is that women are also multi-orgasmic and that there is evidence that from an evolutionary perspective, both actually benefited from having multiple partners. So just to make sure that we have a bit of a balance when we're talking about evolutionary theories and how sound they are and how applicable they are to today's society, there is ample reasons why it makes sense from a genetic point of view for men to want to father children with different women. That makes a lot of sense. And it also makes a lot of sense that there used to be, in some cultures at least we know of, orgies where there was several people coming together in ways that I'm not going to go into too much in this video. And that a point of that was that one could not be quite sure who was fathering which child, which actually made the whole community look after the children. Because if a woman became pregnant and there had been multiple partners that could have been the father of this child, there was higher interest in the whole community looking after these children. So it is much more balanced in terms of the sexes than in mainstream media, and also within science, within the scientific community, has been communicated for decades. Keep in mind that most of these scientists were men and were looking at it through the lens of their own understanding of the world and people at that time. This is just an aside. Same with the hunters and the gatherers. There's lots I could get into there that really alters the main narrative a little bit, but this is a bit besides the point, right? So we had this phase where people thought it was so exciting that all of a sudden we can swipe, we can meet people, maybe we can meet multiple people at once, maybe we can be together with multiple people at once and really let out different facets of our personality with different people that are not connected to our existing network. That used to be an allure and something that was enticing about this online dating, because if you're thinking about it historically, you would normally end up with somebody who was close to you already. So was maybe growing up in the same neighborhood, or was a coworker that you would meet, or, which was the most common way to find a spouse for life, a friend of a friend. So this is someone who is inherently already embedded in your network, who you have mutual connections with, and that fundamentally changes how we show up, because we have such a thing as a reputation to maintain. And if you know that this person that you're going on a date with knows, if you're young, maybe your parents, maybe you know their parents, right? If you're a bit older than that, they might actually know your coworkers. They might know the same grocery store that you both go to. They might both be in the same sports club that you're members of, right? So if there are connections that go beyond just you and this one person hanging out to see if you want to be together, we know that the stakes are higher in terms of how we are behaving, how we are showing up, what we're doing, what we're saying, because it could have ripple effects if we're not acting very politely, if we're not being kind, if we're being a little bit selfish, or if we're maybe not too careful with the feelings of the other person. Word might get out, and that might have negative repercussions on us. Whether this is a conscious or a subconscious process doesn't really matter, because the results are the same. We have removed this sort of watching community aspect in many ways when it comes to the online dating, because this is the beautiful thing about it. You can meet somebody who you might never never come across when you just walk through life, right? So people that are very busy, that work a ton, might not have time to just hang out, look around, join clubs, join groups, or maybe they work in a field that is very dominated by just one gender that they don't happen to be interested in. So it's a beautiful opportunity because you can meet people you otherwise might never come across. And at the same time, the flip side of that is, if you treat them badly, if they treat you badly, there is zero repercussions for your own reputation, because you can tell your people about it from your point of view. And we all know what that looks like, because it will be biased, right? And you can also choose not to disclose any of this. So you can have a really active, crazy love life if you want to. And not a soul must know if you're being like smart around it, right? That was exciting to people. And also this idea of there is so many people out there, and I can't even like in one lifetime meet them all. So there's really this sense of an abundance out there, which is very enticing to us as people, because as soon as we have choice, we feel like we're in power. And it also feels like we can be choosy, because we might say, okay, this doesn't quite match what I'm looking for. And I know there's so many other people, so like somebody else is going to match my desires. All very, very appealing. And at the same time, it also led to this relationship that potentially can be a lifelong one, start out as something where we are assessing the other person in terms of their value to us. This is something where we're seeing parallels in friendships. Maybe there will be another time where I'll get into that, but this whole idea about cutting toxic people loose, and do your friends bring out your best self, and are they a drag or are they high vibe, like those sort of ideas that have a root that comes from a really good place, but in their implementation are actually quite harmful, not just to the people that we might be like cutting out in a really ruthless way, but also to us, because it essentially makes us have to perform or be something or give something to somebody to be our friend. So this has like huge philosophical, psychological, it just has, it just brings an impact with it that I think we're overlooking right now as a society. That's a different topic. Within love, though, we saw the same thing. We saw people all of a sudden assess each other as if for a job interview and very much go through a list that people may have compiled before in terms of what does this person have to look like, be like, behave like, what do they have to have in order for me to even consider them. And it made it, on the one hand, very cognitive, which is the last thing that we want to love. We want to be in our body. Obviously, we want to pick someone who's good for us. Obviously, we want to pick someone who is compatible and who has the same values and the same kind of vision for our life. But we want to be in our hearts, we want to be in our bodies, we want to actually feel connected and have that positive experience of chemistry that's not rooted in childhood trauma and trauma bonds, but actually in like a genuine excitement to connect to someone who we feel is just enough like us to make us feel at home, and also just enough different from us to make us feel really excited to be with them, right? That's kind of being a bit suppressed if you're just coming at it from this highly analytical point of view. And you're also not making this dating very enjoyable, because you essentially have to rock up, show your best side, be really like witty and on point and bring it just to earn their approval so that you can be seen again. And the same way around, you're going to be super critical of this person just so that they earn your approval and your interest in seeing them again. And so we see a commodification of dating that has happened over the last decade and a half. And we see a higher rate of turnover. And we also see a drop in our etiquette and in our behaviors and in what we deem socially appropriate in our norms. Naturally, people are now getting fed up with it, right? Because saying it's a numbers game, being used to people being rude or perhaps ghosting, or just, saying one thing, but that actually turns out not to be the truth. All of those sort of things. Now that people are experienced users of these online platforms, the heyday is over. So it's not everybody's a little bit awkward and everyone's like, oh, I haven't done this yet, and like, this is exciting. No, people are seasoned at it. People know what they're doing, and therefore also know what a cutthroat experience that can be. And most of us don't enjoy the association of a cutthroat experience with actually finding love and actually having a partner who we want to spend and co-create our life with. What does that have to do with you if you're not one of those people and you're actually in a relationship, perhaps even in a marriage? So similarly, we see a change in what we are wanting in our partnership. For a long time, the marker of a good relationship was just that it's lasting. And when a relationship ended, we would often look at how good it was based on how long it was. So if someone was together for 2 months, we might say, well, why are you still grieving that? That was like a very brief moment in time. Whereas if it was 2 decades and it was a 20-year period, we'll be like, it's such a shame that they broke up. That completely ignores the quality of this relationship, because you can be with someone 2 months and it can be the most blissful experience you've ever had. I think Taylor Swift's latest album is kind of paying tribute to that possibility. You can even have a very loose affair where you're not even sure, like, are you even together? Is this even a relationship? No one's talked about it. It's a situationship. That can have a profound impact on you for life, that can both be devastating and really make you like dig deep and get into a space of really looking at your stuff and working on things. But it can also be profoundly positively impactful and really open your eyes to possibilities that you've never known before. Maybe you've had a connection to this person that you didn't know you were capable of. Maybe you had all of a sudden a vision of what life could be with a partner like that you've never seen before, and that can be absolutely mind-blowing. So giving up that relationship can be much harder to overcome than somebody who has been together with someone for 20 years, 30 years. But perhaps from the get-go, this relationship was more rooted in usefulness, and this is what everyone's doing right now. And we're at this age where it just makes sense and it's better tax-wise. And, not everyone has kids, so I guess we're doing it too. If that relationship crumbles, it is possible that the individuals in it have long kind of made peace with the situation and have kind of like settled for what it is. And so ending that relationship can actually be a relief. It can be a liberation. It can be an initiation into a very different reality that can actually be really joyful. So we want to be careful of just looking at relationship duration as a marker of how impactful, how high quality, how fulfilling a relationship is. And people are waking up to this. So people are now looking at their partners in terms of, okay, who am I in relationship to this person? What does this person need, demand from me? What do I need and demand from this person? Does that still fit? Does that make sense? And again, we have seen a shift lately into this transactional realm where people are a lot focused on splitting up household chores equally, for instance, or finances, a big topic, right? So what if you are both emancipated, like how are you going to do this? If you're a double income household, how do you split it? How many accounts do you have? How does that go? If you want to live more traditional ways, does that mean that one person has more power? Does that have to mean that? Like, who's looking after the kids? Like, if I've done this, then you have to do that. This kind of transactional back and forth is something that we have also seen in long-term relationships forever, but specifically in the last like 10 years or so, there's been much more of an emphasis on you've got to almost earn your right to this relationship, and you've got to do your part, and you've got to, level up and bring it, which in some ways can be very empowering, both within the online dating realm and also while you're already in a committed relationship. And it can also really shift fundamentally of what it is to be in love and what it is to be committed to a person and what it is to be chosen by someone and to choose somebody for who they are and not what they do for you. And so in both instances, people are a bit sick and tired of having another realm where they have to perform and where it's not really super easy to feel super at ease being just you and showing all facets of yourself and being accepted for who you are, and also being capable and evolved enough to accept the other person for who they are. So we're seeing a drop in online dating, and we're seeing an increase in people choosing celibacy for a short amount of time or for a longer amount of time. So consciously choosing not to connect with other people in a romantic, sexual way. And within marriages, we also see all of a sudden people waking up to their own needs, seeing that maybe they have suppressed them, they have ignored them, they've shoved them under the rock for a long time, and also wanting to reclaim that for themselves and wanting to put up better boundaries and actually decide when they want to do things and how they want to do this and reconsider it. So I think this is quite an exciting time, because choosing to really disconnect from a relationship or just dating as such can be a really, really powerful catalyst for deep change. And it can really allow us to look at ourselves and our relationship to ourselves, which is always the root at all of our relationships. Like, how you relate to yourself really, really is mirrored in the way that you relate to your romantic partners, but also your friends, also your work, to life itself. So it can be a powerful time of reflection, and it also can instigate a shift into actually coming back to desire and actually coming back to conscious connection. So what I'm hoping to see and what I think people are yearning for is actual real life connection with somebody. I think when you ask people, how would you like to meet the love of your life? Most people will say, oh, I'd love to bump into them in the supermarket. Like, that would just be so nice. We like to meet people in a really organic way, where this piece of chemistry, like, are we physically attracted to one another, is immediately obvious, or at least you know that you're comfortable around a person, and maybe then the actual attraction will grow a little bit later, which is not uncommon and not a bad thing at all. When you're online dating, you can go like for quite a long time without meeting the person, and then you see them, and within a split second, you're like, nope. And then you know it's a waste of time, right? This doesn't happen when you meet organically. Also, we have a yearning for community and for actually hanging out with people and not immediately having that to be the potential for the love of your life. And you got to see if they tick your boxes, and then you got to discard them to save time, or like cling on to them for dear life. But rather just people that we see regularly. Some of them might just be platonic. Some of them we might not be remotely interested in. Some of them we might just enjoy ourselves around. And we like to see a relationship grow over time and just have repeated interactions that are not goal focused. There's strong parallels within sexuality as well. If we're very goal focused, if we're trying to get to where we need to get as quickly as possible, we often miss out on the actual joy of the experience. And we become quite narrow-minded, and we're not looking at the potential that's right around us. Whereas if we're hanging out more, and if there's more of a playful nature and of just spending time together, you get to see different facets of the person. You get to see that person interact with other people that you also know and love and care about. And you get to really without any pressure, get to know this person and they get to know you. And you might hang out on a day where both of you are feeling phenomenal and you look great and you dress great and the like, everything is just like 10 out of 10. And you might also end up hanging out when you're both in a bit of a slump, or one person is really struggling with someone and someone isn't. And you get a little bit of a micro taste of what this person is like in their actual life, not in this polished kind of like lovely vacation mode, exotic weekend away, like that kind of vibe, which we can elicit when we're just getting to meet someone. But then we have to go through this process of like slowly showing that you're not quite as cool and you're not quite that interesting and your life is not always quite that exciting and you're not always looking like that. That is eradicated if the premise of the hanging out together, of the meeting, of the engaging with one another, is not to immediately assess if this is a potential partner for life. Similarly, in marriages and in long-term relationships of a different kind, we also want to have more time to hang out, to be together, to be allowed to grow without that threatening the fundamental agreement that people have, to actually rediscover what roles suit us, how we can work together, what we like to do, what we don't like to do, who can do that instead. Does it have to be the other person? Is there another solution? And just making it a bit more playful and a bit less pressure and a bit less fixating on the role that the other person has already played, agreed to, or that you have negotiated in the very early stages of the relationship. So what I'm making of the Bumble Fumble and of this whole trend of actually people are sick and tired of online dating is a huge opportunity for all of us to actually reconnect to ourselves, whether this involves a phase of no dating or even perhaps in a relationship or in a marriage taking some distance and just rediscovering who we are on our own. That can be very useful. That must not it's not necessary in some cases. It really depends on the person and on the circumstances. But it can also just mean choosing conscious connection in our life. So what I always like to say to clients and also to students, because after the pandemic, you'd be surprised how awkward people have become to even hang out with other 18-year-olds at university, is just to encourage you and me to walk around with open eyes and to actually choose one conscious connection a day that you otherwise would just walk straight past. This can be a stranger if it's someone where you feel like the chances of it being dangerous are relatively slim. This could be a quick conversation in the supermarket, for instance. If you're using any public transport, if you're at the airport, just briefly chatting to another person. Even if this is just someone where you are in a service interaction with a waiter, a sales representative, whatever it might be. Even if you have to call somebody to complain about something, right? Even if I don't know, your water bill is late or whatever it might be, use those points of connection and actually consciously connect. Not because I'm saying this is how you meet the love of your life, or if you do that, then all of a sudden the relationship with your spouse will magically transform. Those things can happen. Those things are beautiful. But just for the sake of coming back to what it means to connect, for the sake of connection, the person that is bagging your groceries does not have to agree with you on all your political values. They do not have to have the same belief system as you, the same spirituality level of you. It does not matter. But if they're bagging your groceries and there's something in there that you really like to eat and they're like, oh my God, that's my favorite thing, connect. Use that moment to connect. Same with colleagues, same with people you might bump into the street. Just smile at them. If you're walking towards someone on the street and there's this little bit of like a back and forth, am I going left? Are you going right? Smile at them, look at them, make those connections just for your own sake. You are going to change the world for the better with this, but it's basically for you to feel how easy it is and that we are enough as we are. We do not have to perform. We don't have to be super fancy or impressive or, like rattle down your CV. You wouldn't do that if you're just bumping into some sort of clerk. You wouldn't be like, well, do you know who I am? That would be rather strange. I mean, some people do it, but rarely does it have the effect that it's intended. But just choose to connect more consciously and see how the ripples of that are actually quite beautiful and how it actually compounds over time. So the more you do this, the more it becomes your habit to look people in the eye, to look around in your environment. If there's a child, if there's a dog, it's quite easy to do it, but also look at the adults. If there's an elderly person, they are so excited when they get to talk to somebody if they don't usually have the chance, or even someone your own age, which sometimes makes us feel the strangest for some reason. Just see if there's little points, no expectation, no performance, no impressing them, and just see how that really shapes how you feel on a daily basis and how you also perceive the world around you.